This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Grand Canyon University's RN to BSN online degree program makes earning your bachelor's in nursing possible. Balance online coursework with local in-person clinicals to position yourself for potential leadership opportunities in the time you have from wherever you are, leaving room for what matters. Achieve your goals with your personalized plan and team behind you. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Visit gcu.edu.
Hey, this is Joe Harris, writer of the X-Files comics. You're listening to the X-Cast.
Hello and welcome to the X-Cast. I'm your host, Sarah Blair, stepping in for the, as ever, Tony Black. Sorry our illustrious leader couldn't be with us today. He told me he had a meeting with a mysterious man who enjoys chain-smoking Morleys, but I'm sure he's completely fine and everything is totally normal, so no need to worry at all because the truth is in here. All right, welcome. I'm so excited to be your guest host today, and this is the Season 2 episode of Dod Kalm. I've got Zach Moore with me, and I'm pretty sure you've heard him on plenty of the previous X-Cast episodes. Actually, Fearful Symmetry last week.
Yes, that was... Hi, Sarah.
Hi, how are you?
Great. I'm doing better this week. A little bit better, because Fearful Symmetry was an awful episode. But Tony and I had a lot of fun talking about it. And, this episode... You'll just have to keep listening to see what I thought about this one. But I'm happy to be here with you. And this is the first X-Cast where we've had all Americans
in
the conversation. So we are making the X-Cast great again, aren't we, Sarah?
I hope we are. I don't think that it was ever not great, to be honest. I think we're sailing along pretty well. I just hope we don't make it ungreat. I don't know. That's my only hope. So for those of our listeners who are not maybe familiar with your regular podcast, you want to tell us a little bit about that really quick?
Yeah, so I actually have a couple of podcasts that I do. The one I do personally is called Always Hold On to Smallville. And in that podcast, we talk about each and every episode of the Young Superman show from the early 2000s. That was on the WB and the CW. And it ran for 10 years, so it was a very formative part of my life. And I'm a huge superhero and Superman fan, so that is, it's my, as the X-Files is to Tony, Smallville is to me. So that's like my passion project, Always Hold On to Smallville. And we're wrapping up the second season as we speak here. So, we're actually we're on a very similar timetable to the X-Cast there because Smallville ran for 10 years as well. Tony and I started the podcast independently of each other, but around the same time. So we're kind of on that same pace. So that's my main podcast, and then I'm also a podcaster on the Trek FM podcasting network, and I co-host Standard Orbit with my friend Ken Tripp, and we talk about Standard Orbit being a catchphrase from the original series. So our area of conversation is the original series of Star Trek, not just the show from the 60s, but also the original series movies, as well as the reboot films, and Tony has actually been on both those podcasts with me over the past few months. So we're podcasting buddies for sure.
That's great. So everybody go check out those podcasts as soon as you finish this one, of course.
Yeah, we'll get our plugs in at the end.
That's right. Exactly. So how about we get to it and start talking Dod Kalm? Let's see, this particular episode is about a mysterious ship in the North Atlantic that is aging people on board at an extremely rapid rate. And Mulder has several theories as to what might be causing a strange and deadly phenomenon. So he and Scully head off to investigate.
Something very strange is going on here, Mulder.
Did they let you in to see Lieutenant Harper?
Yeah, I saw somebody, but whether it was actually the lieutenant...
What do you mean?
He looked about 90 years old. Off by about half a century. You don't seem too surprised.
I want to show you something, Scully. This was the course of the USS Arden when she disappeared. Now, I've been tracking the points of departure and destination for each of these X-Files. On December 12, 1949, a Royal Navy battleship disappeared between Leeds and Cape Perry. The sea was calm, the weather sunny. In 1963, at the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis, a fleet of Soviet minesweepers left from here for Havana. All 6 vessels vanished without a trace. All in all, I've counted 9 unexplained disappearances. Each of them passed through here, the 65th parallel.
Another Bermuda Triangle?
It's more like a wrinkle in time, if Lieutenant Harper is any indication.
Wrinkle in Time, what?
Do you know anything about the Philadelphia experiment?
It was a program during World War II to render battleships invisible to radar. But then the Manhattan Project heated up and it was discontinued, and most of the scientists were relocated to Los Alamos.
Except none of those scientists ever made it to Los Alamos.
Where were they sent?
Roswell, New Mexico.
Are you suggesting that the Philadelphia experiment used alien technology?
Well, less than 9 months after the alleged crash of a UFO in Roswell, New Mexico, the USS Eldridge did more than just hide from radar screens. It disappeared altogether from the Philadelphia Navy Yard, only to reappear minutes later, hundreds of miles away in Norfolk, Virginia.
That's not possible, Mulder, not without defying all laws of time and space.
Those physicists may have been trying to manipulate wormholes on Earth.
Wormholes?
Actual portals where matter interfaces with time at a relatively decelerated or accelerated rate. I'm betting that the military never stopped the work it began 50 years ago.
And that's what you think happened to Lieutenant Harper?
I'll find out soon enough. I'm booked on an 8:30 flight to Norway.
Have you let Skinner in on this?
I'm giving myself a 24-hour head start before I give Skinner my report. I want this one myself.
I'm going with you. If that really was Lieutenant Harper, I want to know what happened to him.
We originally got to see this episode on March 10th, 1995. You weren't watching the show back then, were you, Zach?
I was watching the show sporadically. I mean, I was pretty young at the time, and I remember every now and then watching it, like with my dad or whatever. But I don't really remember getting the X-Files until later on in the show. So I did not see this one live in 1995. No.
I think the first one I saw was the Calasari, so that was, around this time. But I didn't start watching regularly until probably like about season 3 or end of season 2. Mm-hmm. So I can't remember if I actually saw this on air the first time. I feel like maybe I did, but yeah.
Well, the first time I remember watching this one, it was probably the first time I saw it, period, was during the 201 Days of the X-Files from a couple years ago, because there was massive chunks of the X-Files that I had never seen or had only seen once, and so that was a great opportunity for me, because obviously I like the X-Files. It's one of my favorite shows, but I was kind of like just like a normal fan. I wasn't like an obsessive fan like I am with Star Trek and Smallville and whatnot.
Right. Yeah.
But that 201 Days of the X-Files really kind of reignited my fandom leading up to the revival season, of course. And so I went through. I burned out around season 5, but I was watching every episode there up till then. And that was the first time that I saw this episode to my memory.
Okay, that's cool though. It's really cool because I feel like the revival got a lot of new fans and really kind of reinvigorated some of the older fans who may have originally seen the show but forgot about it, or are kind of like me, who I have my comfort episodes that I go to all the time and I watch on a regular basis, but this one in particular, I don't. It's not my go-to,
Right.
So it's not like I sit down and watch the X-Files. I'm like, oh yay, Dod Kalm. Let's watch that one.
It's definitely not my go-to either. But we'll get into that.
Right. And coming right before Humbug, like I'll choose Humbug every time over this one. It sort of gets overlooked, but yeah. Mm-hmm. So and post Fearful Symmetry is yeah. But yeah, so this episode was written by Howard Gordon and Alex Ganta and directed by the ever wonderful Rob Bowman. I'm a big fan of his. Well, IMDb says it got just over 2,000 votes. I think it was like 2,200 20 something maybe. It got a 7.7.
7.7, wow.
I thought that was a little bit high. But,
definitely high. I mean, as we talked about here before, and I talk about on Always Hold On to Smallville, the IMDb rating, it's not a 10 rating. It's usually like 6 to 9.5. So.
But I thought it was really interesting because I went back and looked at Fearful Symmetry, and it got a 6.5, which is, to me, kind of, I'm like, are you watching the same episode that I was watching? Because I was not a 6.5.
Well, yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, on IMDb, a 6.5 is basically a 1, which is what I gave it. I don't know if anyone else has or will ever give another episode as low score as that until maybe we get to Babylon, which I am contractually obligated to mention in every appearance now on the X-Cast. But anyway.
I think I would go with what IMDb put for Fearful Symmetry, and I'd give it like a solid 6. Because there were some parts of it that I really felt redeemed it. But overall, it was like, I mean, it could have been better. It's not an outstanding episode, but for any reason, but I feel like it did have a lot of the X-Files elements that really make the show, what it is. And it had the typical things, like Mulder running off on an investigation and not telling Skinner and all those sorts of things and coming up with his crazy ideas and all of that. So I felt that it was definitely a solid X-Files episode, but overall, in the whole scheme of the show, it's one of the middle episodes, probably. I'd put it in like the hundreds at least. So what about you?
We should have a fun discussion here because I'm going to give this a 3.5.
Really? That low?
I am not a big fan of this episode. I just find a lot of the tropes that I've started to identify, like, okay, why do certain episodes connect with me and certain episodes do not? And this one, first of all, we're ahead of Mulder and Scully again. It feels like we know that there's rapid aging going on, but it takes them like 20 minutes to get to the ship and figure it out. We're like, hey, oh, look, Scully, this ship is from 1991. Like, yeah, okay, we know, and then I felt like the stakes were zero because they're not gonna like die, right? They're not gonna like stay aged, right? Like, there's gonna be a reset button at the end of this episode. As soon as they contract the disease, you're like, just wait, okay. All right, well, what Deus Ex Machina are they going to pull out and save the day at the end, right? and that's what you're waiting for. And the only other person, well, I guess people on the ship like are villains, so you don't care if they live or die, right? Because usually in a situation like Ice, right? Because that's a gold standard X-Files episode. You care about the supporting characters around Mulder and Scully, and so yes, stuff might not happen to Mulder and Scully, but stuff might happen to the other characters that you've grown to care about over the course of the episode, right? But that doesn't happen here. We just have John Savage as the captain. And what do you best know John Savage from, by the way?
I feel like I should know the answer to this.
Well, it's not an answer. It's more.
Okay.
It's not an objective answer.
I don't know. I'm really, to be completely honest, I am terrible with names and faces. I don't recognize him. I don't think it's one of those where I think I kind of know him, but not sure.
Well, mainstream audiences probably know him best from The Deer Hunter, which is that famous film from the 70s, Christopher Walken. Yeah. But okay. Me, being a nerd, being a Trekkie, I know him best from Star Trek Voyager. He was in a two-part episode called Equinox, where he played a crazy captain. So
go figure.
So I saw a lot of similarity. I mean, I saw this. I was like, man, this is very similar to his appearance on Star Trek Voyager, and I liked him in Voyager, but I didn't really like his performance in this episode. Honestly, that's another thing that rated it kind of low for me. I didn't really understand where he was coming from. He made a lot of choices, like acting choices that I wasn't really sure about. So, and he's really the only other main star. I mean, we have a couple other people that pop in and out and vary just maybe a couple scenes each for him, but that's it. So it's basically Mulder, Scully, and this guy turns into the villain of the piece. And so you don't care if he lives or dies, and Scully aren't going to live or die. So the stakes were very, very low. And I know, look, it's not about the destination; it's about the journey. I get that. I host a podcast on Smallville, okay, so I get that concept. But
yeah, well, I definitely, like now that you're talking about that and everything, I was like, That makes sense. I mean, I think I related more to the characterization with Mulder and Scully because I'm a bit of a shipper. But, you know, so we can talk about that. Do you want to get down to the nitty gritty and talk about everything in more detail?
Yeah, we're growing older by the minute here, so let's move on with the, to the episode conversation.
We all die sometime.
We all die.
All right, so we begin with a naval ship evacuation taking place in the Norwegian Sea, and this captain comes up on screen and everybody's yelling and there's a boat, and it really reminded me of several episodes where we have the ghost ship in Triangle, and then there's the rescue in Piper Maru. That was kind of reminiscent of those, except that they hadn't happened yet. So then maybe this one is the one that set the precedent for that, huh?
I thought about Piper Maru as well. You know, when I first saw this, I was thinking, is this a flashback kind of situation? Because, you know, in the Navy, like, you could see a Navy ship from 1965 or 1995. Everybody's going to look pretty much the same. You know, they're wearing the same uniforms. They have military haircuts. The ships basically look the same. A ship is still a ship, right? 40 years after the fact. So obviously it does turn out to be the present day, but when it first starts, you could think, oh, is this another one of those classic X-Files flashbacks in the teaser?
Yeah. I'm glad you said that, because when I started watching it and I turned it on, I was like, oh, well, the time is very vague, and I wonder if they did that on purpose to make it, you know, a little bit mysterious, or
to make you think those guys are in that rescue boat for like 40 years.
yeah, exactly. Or, you know, like, hey, maybe this is a real time warp, or maybe Mulder's right, or something like that. I wonder if that was on purpose, or if it was just stylistically, like you said, that's just how it is, and it didn't change that much. So the captain is saying, like, hey, this is mutiny, and everybody's leaving the ship, but the captain stays with the ship. So everybody else leaves, and then we get a note that says it's 18 hours later, and a crew from a fishing vessel is playing cards, and they get a radio out to this. They see something on the, you know, the radar, and there's no response, and then they find the lifeboat full of these guys, and magically they have somehow aged. So what did you think about that? Was it like a big surprise for you? Did it creep you out at all, or was it just like, what's going on?
I thought it was a very effective teaser, you know, to us anyway, like as the viewer, because it just, again, it's what Rob Rowan brings to the table. You know, it's very atmospheric. You know, the reveal is gradual. We see, you know, we don't know what to expect from this boat, but it's shrouded in darkness and fog, and then we see, like, they throw a rope out to pull in the lifeboat, and we see, like, these old-looking hands pulling on the rope, and you're like, oh, is this where this is going, you know? And then they pull up to the boat, and the, I guess, the Canadians, are they, the fishing boat? They're like, oh, you guys all right, eh?
Like it. Yeah, or Norwegian, I think.
Yeah, Norwegian or Canadians, right. And they shine the light on them, and you're like, whoa! Because you see, like, this whole boat of people, 18 hours later, they establish the time that has passed. We see these people, they were all in, you know, their 20s or 30s, and now they're really old men. They're, like, in their 80s, you know. And it goes by so quickly, you don't dwell on the makeup. You're so shocked by the age. You're like, oh, wow, they're old. Now, to the audience, it's effective, right? But to the people on the fishing boat, have they just never seen old people before? Because they seem shocked. They're like, oh, it's old people.
Where did this boat full of old dudes come from? What is happening? Yeah. I mean, honestly, though, if I were just hanging out playing cards and expecting to get a boatload of fish in my boat, and then I reeled in some bunch of old guys, I'd be surprised, I think. Like, what are they doing out in the middle of the Arctic Circle?
It's like the retirement home cruise ship took a wrong turn.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I'm just poking fun. I did think that the teaser is probably the best part of the episode for me, just the way it's all put together.
It's good, yeah, and I really liked, like you said, like the lighting and the fog and everything really kind of set up the creepy vibe that's going on and surprised us with all that. So yeah, it was a really solid teaser and really drew us in, I think, for me anyway. So yeah, that was good. So then we get the credits, obviously, and then we have at the Bethesda Naval Hospital, Mulder and Scully are, Mulder throws this stuff at her, and he's like, hey, I need you to do your doctor thing and go check these guys out, and nobody's letting me in, but here's your ID, and go to it, Scully. So he kind of just throws her into this situation. She's like, I don't really know what's going on, but okay, I'll do what you say, Mulder. And she goes in and sees this guy who's supposed to be, 35 years old or something, and he's not 35 at all.
Yeah, he's clearly 80 or 90. And so Scully actually starts to get oh, what is this all about? And then she immediately gets shut down by some, obstacle doctor. What are you doing here? We're going to have you escorted out. Give me back my patient's chart. Clearly antagonistic for no reason, which just raises suspicions, right? Scully would not be near as interested and wanted to get to the bottom of this had she not been had doors slammed in her face by these doctors, right?
Yep. And I love how cool she is about it. She's like, I'm a medical doctor. I should be here. This is a hospital.
I love that whenever she says that, she's like, I'm a medical doctor. Whenever she pulls that out, it's like her trump card. It's her ace in the hole. She saves in any of these kinds of situations, and usually people will respect it, but it doesn't work this time.
Oh no, because this other lady is a medical doctor too, and you've got these two medical doctors, and that part made me laugh a little bit because she was so adamant that she had to just get out right now, and it was interesting at the end of the episode when the same character returns and she's completely different.
Yeah, man, you changed your attitude, didn't you?
Yep. So that was interesting. Scully is intrigued, I think, by the medical mystery. I think that's what gets her hooked on this. And then Mulder wants to, he's obviously it's aliens, because that's what Mulder goes
his
to.
First of many theories, and that's the problem I have with this episode. And the guest star, and I forget his name, but the John Savage character, right? He even brings up he's like, oh, what's your theory now? Because they have, I swear, about 4 theories or more about what's going on here, and it's just come on, guys, that's another weak. Again, I'm realizing as I rate these episodes, what are things that I find weak in these episodes, and what knocks it down for me? It's when they don't have a clear just through line of their theories, right? Because you can have one. I think it's fair to have one assumption and it gets turned on its head. I know in Eve when Mulder thought it was alien abduction, right? Back from season 1, and everything was aliens, right? And they quickly decide, oh, no, it's not that, it's this. I'm okay, that's fine. Change gears once. But don't be you're throwing darts at the wall. They're it might be this, it might be this, it might be this, it might be this. It's come on, guys, just focus in the story a little bit more.
Yeah, totally. And I did write down that quote where he's I think is it Trondheim is his name?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, he says something how many theories are you going to have? You're going to get us all killed by the time we figure this out.
The voice of the audience.
Right.
But Mulder was smart he didn't tell Scully anything. He just threw into the situation, as you said. She gets intrigued by it. She comes back to the office, and then he drops all the X-Files, Philadelphia experiment, crazy theories on her. She's like, oh, God. If had he led with that, she would have been no, Mulder, I'm not going to Canada.
Yeah, forget this. Yeah, and then I love how he goes, she's like, have you let Skinner in on this? And he's like, no, I'm giving myself a 24-hour head start. And it's oh, please, Mulder, you're in trouble now. That's a bad idea. Nothing terrible is going to happen for sure. Because
let's not tell anyone where we are, where we're going.
Yeah, exactly. So they head off to Norway. She's like, I'm coming with you. If only to, keep him reined in.
Because he knows about the ship that's missing. And that's kind of the driving force there. And all the reports of it's kind of like a Bermuda Triangle kind of situation in this area and these coordinates. So that's his. He's had several X-Files on in the past. He's got the classic conspiracy map on the wall where he's got all the lines of all the ships that have gone through the area. So
he's got to have the map. Yeah. Sure.
Do people still do that?
I don't know. I think they do it for murders. You got to get your murder board up there, right?
It's in this digital age, it's just inefficient to have a map with pictures and strings and markers everywhere,
right? But it's so much more fun.
Yes, no, it's great. I love it. It's part of the nostalgic of the X-Files. It's like the microfiche, right? You gotta love it.
Yeah. So he thinks it's a wormhole. He sticks with that for a while.
But a wormhole caused by the military using technology from extraterrestrials, it's like a 3-layer theory.
Right. Yeah, it's like, wow, Mulder, let's twist this up a little more. Let's throw in some, something else here for you. Just to add it for Scully, to make her really work for it. So they get to Norway, and all these sailors are like, we're not going to talk to you about this. We're not going there, and it's very mysterious, and nobody is going to go, and they can't find anybody to let them hire a ship to take them up to the spot where this boat's supposed to be. And in comes Henry Trondheim, who is magically an American, who magically speaks Norwegian. And he comes up and he's like, well, I'll take you. Just, show me the money and let's go. Like, Mulder is very vague about exactly why he wants to go.
But Mulder, he's always that way, though, right?
Well,
he was like that already with Scully in this very episode. Like, he knows that people, like, if he told people what he was really thinking, they would not give him the time of day. So, at least he has the presence of mind. Like, that's what separates him from, like, the lone gunman, right? They just... he can camouflage into normal society when it's called for.
So they get on this ship with Trondheim, and he gets them up there, and they're searching for the ship where these guys came from, and boom, they literally hit the ship.
Yeah, they
just right there.
They hit it.
They just run right into it. So, and then they, they're like, oh, hey, there it is. Let's go.
So Mulder, Scully, Trondheim, and his first mate all go on to the ship. The Ardent is the military ship that they found. And so I was confused, like, is there anyone left on Trondheim's ship at this point?
That really messed with my mind because I had to go back and watch it a few times, and I was like, I don't understand how the ship gets stolen, but I think it was because that one guy who was on the ship already who we'll meet.
Yeah, Ulfson. Yeah,
Ulfson.
He was with a crew of 4, like, pirates or whatever.
Yeah, like, were they hiding out, and then they were like, oh, hey, here's a ship, let's go steal it, but why would they leave him behind?
Yes, that's a good point. Like, I
never could figure that out.
The first time I watched it, I was like, oh, did they not, like, secure the moorings or whatever you're supposed to do, and it just drifted off, right? Because there's no conversation about what happened. He's like, that's my ship! That's my ship! That's my... I'm like, yeah.
My ship! Like, how... They just got off. Nobody is getting back on. Like, what even? And for a while, I thought it was the first mate. Maybe he was scared, but he was there, too.
Right, so then I thought, how big is his crew? Maybe because they established in the bar that nobody wants to go out there. They think it's creepy and stuff. So I'm like, oh, maybe he has his crew mutinied or whatever. And they're like, okay, good. The captain's gone. Let's get out of here, guys. And I thought, okay, that would at least track with what they'd already established in the episode. But much like the theories on what is even happening here, they keep adding more stuff to it, right? They're like, oh, well, the pirates and the other guys must have gotten on the ship and left while we were here. It's like, but it's never really spelled out either. It's kind of mixed into other conversations. So nobody really sits down and explains what's going on. I consider myself a pretty intelligent television watcher. I don't need to be spoon-fed things, but I would like some kind of explanation, right? Because
right.
It's all just very vague.
So what was happening was, like, there was a meteor or something causing the ship to oxidize, and that was making these free radicals or whatever age the ship and the people. So why couldn't it just be like, once they got close to that point where it was, why didn't their ship just shut down for no reason? Like, that would have made way more sense.
Yeah, because it seemed like...
And that's why nobody would want to go up there, because, like, that's where ships go to die or something, Like, that would have made a lot more sense to me.
Because it seemed like it was a singular event, and then, but then also they act like it's always that way, because they talk about the meteorite, and then you think, oh, is this a real meteorite, or is it a UFO? Because there's like a Norwegian legend about like a god coming from the sky, and it's like, oh, well, that would tie into, ancient aliens and stuff, right? And it's like, what is your angle? What are you going for here, guys? Again, the episode undercuts itself by not sticking with a theory.
Exactly. It's all over the place. Yeah, I can totally see that. So, yeah, that really confused me too, that part.
Yeah, I'm glad I wasn't alone.
Okay, see a boat. There it goes. Like, I just, maybe aliens took the boat. I don't know.
I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens.
But it's aliens. Maybe it was a cigarette smoking man. So they get on the ship, and now they're stranded. And they see this plaque that's all rusted over, and it says that the ship was built in 1991.
Ooh, did you not know that? Like, they know what... it's not like they just came... I feel like I'm being negative here, but this is a frustrating episode because they know it's the Ardent, right? They know what ship... It's not like they just came across a ship and they're like, oh, wow, this ship must be 50 years old, right? They don't know what it is, and they slowly discover, oh my god, it's 5 years old, right? That's when a scene like that would make sense, right? But it doesn't make sense in the context of they found exactly what they were looking for. So why is it shocking that it's a 5-year-old ship?
Not only that, but to add like more mystery, as you're sitting there watching it, like the camera pans in closer and closer, and there's more oxidation.
Right,
happening.
it dissolves
it's like
before
this
our
creepy
eyes.
stuff happening on the spine, and it's like, ooh, what's going on? Something. But let's just like pile it on here instead of get to the business. So yeah. So this was the next scene was one of my favorite parts because I love dead bodies.
Oh, okay.
I know it sounds crazy, but
you and Donnie Foster, right?
Yep. We have that in common. But like, it's always fun whenever dead bodies appear on the show, and especially like in Small Potatoes when the dad falls down with the quicklime and all that, and then Mulder is looking at his, corpse on the table and his tail breaks off. Like, that just always makes me laugh. So then, like, that reminded me of this scene, when Scully is looking at this guy, and it kind of looks similar to that scene. And
because he's decomposed. She says he's almost like he's mummified.
Yeah, and it's like a pillar of salt or something. And so then she like touches his hand and it snaps off.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I'm probably a terrible person for laughing at that, but
dead body humor, gotta love it.
Yep. So I've got my dark sense of humor there. So I always enjoy it when dead body parts break off, I guess. I don't know, I'm weird like that. But so while they're looking at that, that's when the ship gets stolen while they're, I guess, in there, right? Or was it before that? Like, I can't really remember.
Well, not much happens in this episode, so it's easy to get it very confused. Like, what part were they in this room and this happened? And it gets very repetitive after a while. Because they're in this room and they're in that room. There's water here. There's a dead body there. Eventually, they do discover that the first mate has been killed, blunt force trauma, and they're like, "Oh my god, there's someone else on the ship." And they hear some noise and they open up, I guess, like a I don't know what it was, like just a shelf, like a cabinet, and you see the captain, and he's still alive. He's in there holding like a Jack Daniels, right? trying to stay warm, with alcohol, liquor, and they pull him out. They start talking to him. So what? Let's get down to it. What did you think of this age makeup on this guy?
For the time period, I would say it was pretty good, but I think we've been spoiled in the age of HD and CGI and all that. I think, considering it was practical makeup, it was pretty good. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, not that it looked great or realistic at all.
I didn't mind his, probably because you saw this guy for 2 minutes at the beginning of the episode, right? So you don't really know what he's supposed to look like. When Mulder starts aging, it looks pretty bad, though. Like I was fine with all the other aging. I think Scully's was okay. I think John Savage's was okay. But Mulder looked like Prune Face from Dick Tracy. Like, it was just ridiculous. But this guy was like, he was okay. You can at least take him seriously. And then he starts telling a story, though, about like there was a glowing light in the water, right? And he's explaining what happened. And you're like, so that makes you think it was a singular event. That it was a one-time thing and it sprung this off. But later on, their explanations imply that no, this is the way this coordinates are for whatever reason, because there's the meteorites down there and all that. It's confused. I'm so confused. I'm so confused, Sarah.
So many theories, really. So, and let's be honest, like, if you were aging rapidly on a ship all alone, would you not just go to the bottle and start drinking? That's what I would do. I'm totally with him on that. Let's look at the most realistic part of this episode. Not that the X-Files is ever truly realistic, but so they, like, Mulder and Scully get together and they're starting to, like, whisper and stuff, and they're trying to figure out exactly what's going on. And Olofsson comes up and we see him, and he's not aged at all.
Yeah, he tries to attack Trondheim, and then Mulder and Scully intervene. But yeah, this guy comes out of nowhere. I mean, he looks like Thor. And yeah, but they tie him up. And yeah, he hasn't aged at all, which is it is interesting because you're like, oh, well, okay, this is interesting. This is a new angle here. Let's figure out what this is. So it breathes a little new life into something that had started to get stagnant already.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so, that's intriguing and it makes us want to know more. But then I'm like, well, why didn't he get on the boat if like his other guys did? Like, how come he's hanging out there? Like, what happened with that?
Right. Well, what was his objective by staying
yeah.
there?
He's like so mysterious and smiley all the time. Like, he's like, I know the secret to not turning old. And
yeah, he's pretty smarmy.
Yeah. If I was on that ship and I didn't want to get old, I'd get on the first boat that came along and steal it. Mm-hmm. If I were him. So
which is apparently what his other three guys did.
Yeah. So I'm interested. I would like to know that story. They didn't cover that, but yeah. So then they get him tied up, and Mulder and Scully take a nap, or Mulder does. Somebody does, right?
Yeah, Scully takes a nap. Mulder takes the first watch, and then we have a slow reveal of like. It's kind of dark, so Mulder gets up. You don't really see his face. He's talking to Scully. She's like face down in her bunk, and he's like, "Oh, it's time to get up." She's like, "Oh, okay, I'm awake." And she looks up, and he's like, "Oh my God, Scully!" And she's
like, "Oh no, Mulder! Mulder, you're old and hideous. What happened to you?"
The aging virus or whatever it is has struck them as well. And then they finally start theorizing about the you mentioned earlier the electromagnetic energy and the free radicals and which free radicals always sounds like some kind of protest group to me. It was weird, like
the oxidation.
Well, Scully and free radicals in the 1970s. The free radicals were on the forefront of the peace movement or whatever, right? But no, it's a scientific term here. So yes. and it causes the organic equivalent to rust, which is what they're experiencing because they point out our skin is aging, but our hair is not, which it's an interesting thing to point out. And I'm curious why they even did it that way. Like, if that was supposed to be some cool sign that it wasn't your traditional, oh no, everyone's getting older episode, which lots of science fiction shows do, right?
Yeah, that was interesting observation for Scully. I like when she gets all sciencey and she notices the little tiny things that are turned out to be pretty important, so that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, Scully's a genius.
She really is. She is awesome. She's my hero. I really liked when the ship starts to rust and she goes, "The ship is bleeding," and that was pretty cool.
Yeah, which is what the captain had said, and they thought it was him being poetic or something, but no, it literally was bleeding.
No, really, it really is. Yeah.
Oh, and meanwhile, while they were like tying up Thor or whatever, the captain had passed away, and they had given him water. Okay, so they start to put the pieces together, like, oh, it's something to do with the water, because you don't know if it's airborne, if it's in the water, if it's some kind of tactile thing you have to touch. But they start to put the pieces together, and then Scully and Mulder go looking. They go following a pipe that's not rotting, and they find the sewage system, and that's they start putting it all together. But again, the structure of these revelations of the episode doesn't quite make sense because at the same time, Scully and Mulder discover the sewage system, which is not it hasn't been tampered with. Like the main problem is the desalinization, right? Is that the term? has been compromised of the ship, and that's what's getting the water of the ocean into the regular drinking water, and that is what started affecting everyone. That's the conclusion they draw, right? But they're like, oh look, the sewage system, and that's where they find that. Thor, whatever, I'm going to keep on Thor.
That's a better name. Anyways,
Thor, and the Warriors 3 down there, his other crew.
And all the mice, the rats.
Yeah, but they're like, why were they all held up here? Oh, the sewer system's not contaminated. Okay, but simultaneously, while this is going on, John Savage and Thor are having a conversation in Norwegian, which actually I
Right.
like that. I like when shows do that.
Yeah.
I like when heroes used to do that. Like, these people are from around the world; they wouldn't all speak English.
Exactly.
So I like oh, look, guys, subtitles. That's right. We can
Yeah,
read, right?
yeah.
Use your brain, audiences. So I did make a note. I thought it was funny. They had this whole conversation in Norwegian, right? But apparently the phrase "first let me go" is the same
Yes,
in
I
Norwegian as
noticed
English.
that. Yes. I noticed that too. I was like, wait, what?
Why did we subtitle that? Why did we throw that in anyway? But he's promising John Savage that I'll tell you the secret. You just got to let me go. You think those two guys? I mean, classic divide and conquer, right? He's like, okay, these two guys are gone. I can work on this guy and get him on my side and get him to let me go. So he does pretty much. You see the wheels turning on John Savage's face, and he does. Go to untie Thor. But so we come back to Mulder and Scully, and we cut back to them, and then we see this is a classic and a very mediocre at best episode. I think this is a very classic creepy X-Files scene. We see dead Ulfason. I'll call him by his right name. We see the dead Ulfason in the bathroom. Like, oh, okay, I guess John Savage killed him real quick. And then we see John Savage drinking toilet water, like cuffing it out, like bent over a toilet bowl drinking, and it's just so creepy. It's so unsettling, right?
Would you drink toilet water if you were on that ship?
I mean, if there was nothing in the toilet at the time, sure. I mean, I would, if somebody told me who wasn't aging, hey, you know why I'm not aging? I'm drinking this toilet water. I mean, look around, right? I mean, like, okay, it's worth a try. What's there to lose at that point, right? And as long as there's no bathroom material already in the toilet, I would drink the toilet water. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that one. Yeah, for sure. I'd go find that Jack Daniels bottle and, like, fill it up and hide it for myself.
But this was a key problem in the episode structure, right? Because what they should have done was have him figure that out way before Mulder and Scully, right? And he's like, hoarding the water and staying young while they continue to get aging, and that raises the stakes, But again, they choose not to raise the stakes. They go to commercial, they come back, and they're like, "Hey, we figured out what's causing the aging." This is, I think, where he says, "Oh, you got another theory?"
Yes, exactly. You two are full of theories. First one and then another. And by the time you figure it out, we'll all be dead. Except not for him, because he's drinking toilet water.
Exactly. So there's no added advantage to him having he killed Ulfason for nothing then, because they figured it out. And that doesn't. And they never. I don't think they ever find out that he killed Ulfason, do they? He says,
No,
I fell asleep and he got
disappears.
away. Yeah.
Yeah, I love how they're like, oh, he just got away. And they're like, okay, like, whatever. He's just on the ship somewhere. No big deal.
And then this is where things just start to get boring, in my opinion. Like, we just know what's going to happen. They're getting older. They're all on the same page now about the toilet water. So they're the sewage system, whatever.
One thing that really cracked me up was, like, Scully's all like, let's take blood and urine samples. And she's got all of everything she needs on the ship. Like, what? Where does she even get any of that stuff? And all the testing.
Well, it is a military ship. I'm sure they have a sick bay, right? An infirmary, or whatever the terminology is in the military these days. So yeah, I thought that as well. Like, well, what did she really have in her, like, backpack or whatever when they got on the ship? But it's a fully functioning military ship. I'm sure they had something like that. At this point, John Savage continues to try to turn Mulder and Scully against each other at this point, because Mulder's not getting better. There's something about his biology for whatever reason. And that makes sense. Not every medicine or not every cure for every ailment is going to help every person the same way, because everybody's body works differently. So Mulder is continuing to age. Scully and John Savage are not. So he's like, look, we should stop giving him water and give ourselves those rations, and hopefully we can get rescued before it's too late. And she's like, no, we're going to save Mulder. So at this point, he basically just decides to turn on him, locks himself in the sewage room, and it's just going to hoard the water until hopefully they can get rescued, because there's a limited amount of the sewage water left, right?
Yes, there's not much. So he backflushes everything and gets it all down into the sewage hold, where he locks himself up with all the rats and hangs out with them and fights them for the water instead. But I did like that element of where Scully is basically protecting Mulder. Like, she's so tired and so exhausted and frustrated, and John Savage is sitting there, and that moment where he's looking at her and she's looking at him, and it's so creepy. And it sort of just like fades to dark on him, and he's like planning their demise.
Right, that is a good shot. Again, Rob Bowman bringing it with the directorial stuff there.
Exactly. Yep. So I did enjoy that moment quite a bit. And then so he goes and locks himself with all the fresh water, and Scully goes through the whole ship and finds some sardine juice and a few lemons because scurvy. And
the snow globe,
yeah.
I really like this sequence though, like, because God bless Mark Snow's music. Those piano stings are back from Blood, like dung 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 dung. It's a breath of excitement in this, and what had become a boring episode at this point, because she's frantic and you're frantic with her, like, oh God, we gotta find water. She's going through lockers and cabinets and all that stuff, and just for a brief moment there, we're exciting again. It settles back down after that, but she does concoct like kind of a, I don't know, like a mason jar worth of liquid. She wants to give it to Mulder to help slow his process.
Would you drink that?
No, okay.
I don't know.
Because of the color. The color is key.
It looked like urine.
Yeah, exactly.
It looked really gross.
Trust me, Mulder, I'm a medical doctor. The clear toilet water, I'd have a much easier time drinking than this urine-looking bottle.
You know you're in trouble when the toilet water is more palatable than what Scully can come up with snow globe juice.
But, I want to touch on something here that you mentioned earlier. At being a Mulder and Scully shipper as you are, like, you probably... And I think that's where a lot of fans like this episode, because... I mean, again, we get to see their bond, and she's looking out for him, which is a nice reversal, because way too often in this series, she gets kidnapped and he has to go save her. So it's a nice turn on that, and we get to see them grow old together, right? So that's nice for the shippers.
Yeah, I really liked that conversation that they had, because deep buried in this like nothing episode, you get this really profound moment of her talking about her near-death experience when she was in the hospital. And, she hadn't talked about that before with Mulder or assumingly anyone else. And here they are basically consigning themselves to death at this point. They're like, we are going to die. So let's, I'm going to tell you my deepest, darkest secret, Mulder, because you're my best friend. And secretly, I'm in love with you. No, that's my shipper talking. Sorry. But I really, like, that moment was really cool. Like, whether you're a shipper or not, I mean, their platonic relationship there, like, really manifests itself. And she's sitting here with Mulder and telling him, like, it's gonna be okay. Like, even when they think they're dying. Like, she gives him that, at least. And I love that moment. And it's sort of just, in this episode that really doesn't have much to offer, but there it is. And you're like, wow, that's a really poignant moment for them. I really enjoyed that. And when she's writing in the journal, that part, where she's talking about the children's book and the mythology, and how she says that the wolf is at the door. And as a writer, like, I was like, oh, that's really good.
Yeah, Scully, I mean, she waxes poetic with her last words, right. Does she not?
Yeah, exactly. It's that one few minutes there that really made me boost my ranking a little bit. That's really where I got my numbers from, was that. That's where I liked it the best. But,
I think any episode of, any show that, like, if you're a fan of a show, you can find something in any episode, really, that's like, oh, you know what, this episode was kind of bleh, but this part, this moment, this scene, this interaction, this joke, whatever it may be, you can find something, and definitely that scene is a great Mulder and Scully moment, and it celebrates their platonic relationship as well. It doesn't dive into the cliche like you were joking about, but oh, I'm in love with you, right? Because you can't hit the reset button on that just yet, right? We can undo their aging, but once you cross that line, you can't go back from that. But all this is going on, and John Savage has become a non-factor at this point. He's locked himself in the sewage room, and then the ship starts to erode. and then, they start taking on water, and then he, I guess he gets poetic justice for, he locked himself in there to keep the water from the other guys.
That moment is called karma's a bitch. That's what you call that.
And he tries to get out, and he can't open the door, and
and he's all, help me, and it's like, why would we help you? You just,
Well, it's interesting because Mulder and Scully don't even know what happened to him. Like, they don't hear it. They just ignore this. So I'm saying he becomes a non-factor. But I do kind of like that too, because it would be kind of cliche to like have them try to help, but they're too old at that point and weak. Like that would have been one way to do it, I guess, if they wanted. But he just kind of dies there alone, And then again, Rob Bowman does a great directorial move here. We don't see like him drown. We see like a pan out from the door, like behind a staircase, and you just hear his screams slowly stop as he's banging on the door. And then we cut back into the room, and he's just floating, and he's dead. And you're like, oh, okay, anticlimactic. I don't know.
And Mulder and Scully are like, did you hear that? And they're like, oh, the ship is flooding. Whatever. Let's just hang out here. Let's go drink some sardine juice.
We're getting too old for this.
Yeah. One of my favorite things about Mulder's character and David Duchovny, how he plays it, is he can find humor in the darkest of moments. And he goes, well, I always wanted to go on a cruise when I got old, but this is not how I pictured it.
Yeah, Mulder, his wit to the last, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
As someone who endeavors to have a one-liner for any situation, I love that about Mulder.
Exactly. So, Mulder and Scully lose consciousness, and then we see them being rescued, and then they're all of a sudden at the naval hospital again with the doctor. We're back to the doctor.
Right, and this reminds me of Darkness Falls, in a way, because like they succumb to the threat of the episode, which is like, oh, wow, okay. Like, didn't expect that. I mean, in that episode, you expect it less. In this one, you see them getting older, so there's going to be some kind of rescue and resolution. But it did remind me of that, although, again, I felt that Darkness Falls was a lot better in a lot of respects. But that one as well, because I'm sorry, I don't buy that you can reverse that kind of aging. I believe you can stop it, right? Like, we can stop the process. Like, okay, you're 75 now. You're not going to get any older, but you're 75 now. But they start reversing the process, and they do this a lot in Star Trek, right? But the way they solve it is they have the transporter, right? Which is a futuristic technology that can like rewrite your DNA when the time calls for it. It's like, and so I can suspend my disbelief more in a like a true science fiction future setting like Star Trek. That like, okay, guys, I'll believe your technology can undo aging, although it's complete BS science. I'll go with it because I've seen you do crazy things. But this is the X-Files here. This is the 1990s. This is our world, right? And even with all the fantastical things we've seen, that really breaks the episode for me. Like to have them expect us to believe that because Scully took all these detailed notes, they found the secret to de-aging them, right? So that's my take on it.
I did have a bit of a problem with that the first time I watched it, and then the second time I watched it, and I paid more attention to her talking about the heavy salt and all of that. And I thought when the doctor said, we got your fluids back up and this and that, I was like, well, maybe they weren't old. Maybe they were just really, really, really dehydrated, and it made their skin turn into prunes.
Right, like when you leave your hand in the water too long, or you're in the water too long. Yeah.
So maybe
literal prune face in Mulder's case.
Yes.
See, guys, it's not bad makeup. It's just it's not aging. It's a different kind of thing, so it's fine. Don't criticize it. They
weren't literally turning older. They were just dehydrating like prunes, literally. So that's kind of how I justified that in my brain a little bit, because it did bother me, and then I was like, oh well, maybe they're just hydrated again, and that evened out the wrinkles a bit.
Mm-hmm. No, okay, I'll go with that. That helps a little bit. Bit.
Yeah, so that was my take on it. And so they get back to reality and rehydrate, and that's pretty much it, right? I mean, that's how the episode ends.
Right, but Scully's like, oh, we have to get back on the ship, and we have to, and they're like, oh, it sank an hour after we rescued you. And then we fade to, the water. I'm like, was this episode short a couple minutes that we need to fade to the... It's like, here's some stock footage of the ocean, guys, to remind you where we were, right?
The ghost ship is gone with John Savage at the bottom of the Norwegian Sea.
And he meets
Farewell.
a similar end in his Star Trek Voyager episode because he's a crazy captain on another ship, and then that ship gets destroyed. And that's why it was just funny to me because I'm like, he has a type, I guess, the guest star captain who goes a little crazy and meets a bad end. So I don't know, like I just didn't like his performance. I feel like a different actor might have made different choices. I don't know how much of it was the script or how much of it was his. I feel like they should have made him more like sympathetic at the beginning, but he was always kind of a jerk, like the whole time.
I mean, he dogged on Olafsson for being a pirate, but he was kind of a pirate himself because he was all like, well, I'll take you if you pay me enough.
Yeah, complete mercenary,
like,
yeah.
He was kind of just not a nice guy. But there was that moment where he buried the captain at sea.
Yeah, his first
said
mate.
some
Yeah,
nice
that was nice,
things.
yeah.
Yeah. So at least there was that, I guess.
At least there was that, I guess.
If that tells you anything about the episode. So now that we've discussed it all in detail, have I like convinced you to adjust your ranking at all, or are you still sticking with 3?
That's a good question because I feel like I feel like through these conversations sometimes, like I think I mentioned it earlier that I'm like, I was too hard on that one, or that one was too high. But no, I'm going to stick with my 3.5.
Yeah. I think I might bring mine down to like a 5.
And all these other criticisms, like it was just boring too. You know, it wasn't like one thing or the other. It was just a combination of all these little things added up to just not a very enjoyable episode. Because look, we talked for like an hour here, but what did we really talk about? Like they were on the boat and they got old and then they got healed. Like there was no drama or stakes or escalation or anything. Even the timetable, like you weren't really sure, like if they like. I feel like there wasn't a defined timetable either of like, oh, we have to get out of here by now, and like that the ticking clock would have helped more just with the drama.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, they said like it happens in a matter of hours, but another thing that really bothered me was Scully goes, the Navy knows where we are and they're on their way. Like, how the heck do they know where they are and that they should be on the way? Like, did Skinner finally get the info that they were out there? Was it the 24 hours, that was up, and they finally sent the report to Skinner, and he's all like, oh, Mulder and Scully need rescuing in Norway. What the heck are they doing in Norway?
Could you send a delayed email in the 1990s? I don't know if we had the technology yet, but yeah, I guess because the Navy was covering it up. Obviously, the military was covering up this whole thing because they weren't really sure what was going on. They knew where the ship was, and it was only a matter of time before they went to go check it out for themselves. Maybe that's what Scully was talking about. But I agree. She was like, where did that come from? Like, they already established that the radios don't work, and,
There were a lot of things I felt were really convenient in this episode. And I would have liked, like you said, I would have liked the stakes to be a little bit, like the boat disappearing, getting driven off by who knows what, the aliens or whatever. That felt really convenient to get them stranded there. I felt they could have been, like, even when they hit the boat, couldn't they have just damaged the boat and it sank? That would have made a lot of sense. Like, let's just break the boat and get them stranded here.
I mean, this was a good first draft for a story. And it needed a couple of rewrites, some refinement, some
Do you think that maybe it was because of the way they set it up and the way they were doing the production of it? Do you think it was just like, let's hack this out and we just don't have time to fix it?
Well, I did a little research on the episode before we recorded here, and they had access to a boat. What's the word? From Colleen in-game, they had access to a Canadian Navy boat, and so they were like, oh, well, we have this. Let's write a script around it, right? And I think maybe that was the problem. The story didn't come from, hey, I got this great idea about like this boat at sea, and like they're going through the Bermuda Triangle, and then we can have old. That's not where it came from. It came from, we have access to this boat. Let's use it. Write a story around it. Go.
And do it fast. I mean, it takes me forever to write anything. I don't know how they did some of those scripts at such a fast pace. That is amazing to me.
Yeah, and I mean Howard Gordon and Alex Gans. I mean these are these aren't just some guy off the street, right? These are dyed-in-the-wool X-Files guys. So, I mean, they knew the characters. And that shows, like, through Mulder and Scully, they know the characters. Mulder and Scully, through all this, are totally in character.
Oh, yeah.
And that's good. Because, you know, and even some of the lesser episodes, they get the characters wrong. Like, that's the ultimate offense to me. Like, when, like, we know these characters. We see them every week. If they act out a character, you're going to call them out on that. But that was not the case in this episode. So at least it had that going for it.
Yeah, so... I mean, overall, a mediocre episode. Not super great. Not completely, utterly horrible, like Babylon. It's better than Babylon. Better than Fearful Symmetry.
that should be the new rating on the show. Forget the scale of 10 or whatever. Just better than Babylon or worse than Babylon. That should be the scale.
High praise indeed, right?
Agent Scully, can you hear me?
Yeah.
It's been 36 hours since your rescue. I've got you on dialysis with a high flux filter. You're obviously responding well. Your electrolytes are almost back to normal. And your fluid status has been corrected.
Mulder, where is he?
His endocrine system was considerably more compromised than yours. Frankly, we didn't think that he'd make it. Until we discovered this. Based on your observations, we're giving him a course of synthetic hormones, which seems to be working.
Whatever caused this is still out there. I have to talk to a naval liaison. We have to salvage the ship in order
Agent
to study
Scully,
the salt.
the ship was taking on water. It sank less than an hour after you were rescued.
Well, I guess that about sums things up, don't you think? I appreciate you coming to chat with me and hang out for a little bit. Where can we find your shows again? Remind us, and find you online and in the world of podcasting.
Sure. Well, as for me personally, I'm on Twitter at MooreOnZach. That's MooreOnZach. And for my podcast, as I have mentioned several times, probably too many already. One of my podcasts is Always Hold On to Smallville, where we talk about the Young Superman show from the early 2000s, and we're on Twitter at Always Smallville with one S. And I'm also a co-host of Standard Orbit on the Trek FM network, and you can find us on Twitter at Trek FM. So I am a busy podcaster.
That's awesome. We're all friends here. We like to support each other, so that's great. So now that we've reached the end of this podcast, everyone, please feel free to go check those out.
Yes, please do. Thank you.
Yeah. And I am Sarah Blair, and you can find me on Twitter. I'm there pretty much more than I should be for, considering I have so much writing to do. I've got another book coming out in my Tides of Darkness series this summer. So my first book is available, Darkness Shifting. And then the next book is coming out, Darkness Rising. And it's got a lot of X-Files meets King Arthur-y elements in it. So that was a lot of fun to work on. And I'm over at the X-Cast on several of the podcasts, and you can find me on Friday nights with the Blair Watch Project. I'm going through seasons 8 and 9 because I hadn't watched those yet, considering Mulder had disappeared and wasn't really into the show after that.
Well, I'm exactly the same for you, but on the Office. When Michael Scott left the Office, as Steve Carell left the show, I stopped watching. And I have never watched seasons 8 or 9 of The Office, so
yeah, I haven't either. Samesies. Once the main characters leave, like, what's the point? It's not the same show anymore, right? So yeah, I'm with you on that.
But do you still feel that way now that you're watching 8 and 9 for the X-Files?
Yes.
Okay.
I liked. I'm like 10 episodes in, I think, and I liked I was good with the first 3-ish, and then it started going downhill for me because it's just getting really bad. The episodes are not great, and I think that's the biggest problem. I was getting on board with Doggett for a few episodes. I liked him, and I liked where his character was going, but that too also went downhill. So,
all right.
I'm hoping it'll turn around. Everybody at the X-Cast team says that season 8 is one of their favorites, and I'm just not seeing it yet. So, yeah, so that's how that's going. Everybody come and join me. But I think we've had a great first All-American episode of the X-Cast. Thanks for joining me, and everybody go look up Zach, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, Sarah. I'm gonna go watch some baseball and have a hot dog, some popcorn. Gonna set off some fireworks.
I think I'm gonna just go eat a whole apple pie.
Exactly.
Oh, let's see here. We also need to do the X-Cast. Find us, look us up, @BX_cast on Twitter, and on iTunes is where you can find our podcast. Thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll be back soon for a brand new episode. But until then, just remember, trust no one.
The Xcast is produced and presented by Tony Black, part of the Black Hole Media podcast network. Title music is courtesy of Will A, who you can find on Twitter @IamWillAYE.